5:30, we'll call the meeting to order. Item 2, Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3, Agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Second.
Terry with the motion, Megan with the second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda in its entirety?
So moved.
Terry with the motion. Tom with the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 5, open forum. Open forum is an opportunity for patrons to share their thoughts and concerns to the board. The school board will listen, but no discussion takes place and there will be no board action. The board members may ask clarifying questions. The protocol established for open forum is to provide a time limit of 3 minutes to share concerns. If a patron would like to have a two-way discussion, they are encouraged to schedule a meeting with the superintendent. Appropriate and respectful public decorum is expected. Any complaints about school employees should refer to School Board Policy KL, Complaint Against School Employee. Tanya, do we have anyone for open forum?
Yes, we've got Derek Allen.
We're ready. Go ahead.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for your time and your service to the district during what we are now challenging as financial circumstances. I want to speak about the long-term education impact of the staffing and structural design being considered. Because while budgets are annual, the outcome for students lasts much longer. First, I urge you to look at the proposal to eliminate a high school math teacher while retaining a counseling position due to a resignation that allows the role to be absorbed. This should not be a decision of convenience, but should be a decision of education. Math is not an elective support. It is a foundational academic subject tied to graduation readiness, workforce preparation, and college access. Reducing math capacity often means larger class sizes, fewer course options, less intervention time, and increased strain on teachers who remain. Those effects may not appear immediately, but over time they show up in lower achievements and reduced opportunities for students. I want to be clear, this is not an argument against counseling. Student mental health and guidance matter deeply. But this should not be framed as a forced choice without first presenting a clear academic impact analysis. What will the class sizes be? What courses could be affected? And what is the long-term academic cost compared to the short-term financial savings? I would also like to specifically address the proposal reduction in the rural librarian position. This is not a simple librarian role. This individual is a licensed teacher who works part-time to provide two crucial functions: giving classroom teachers time to lesson plan and serving as an additional instructor for our students to help them strengthen their English skills. Removing this position does not remove the need it fills. It shifts that burden directly onto teachers who are already teaching multiple grade levels with limited support. It also removes a trusted adult and instructional resource from the rural schools. Before approving this reduction, I would ask the board to clearly identify who will provide that planning time, where that English support will come from, and what instructional capacity is lost when this role is gone. My second concern is the recommendation to establish the Homeschool Connection program as its own standalone school. What does this look like? What will it cost? Growth in alternative education is happening and families deserve a strong option, but creating a separate organization or school brings permanent costs, assigning teachers, administrative oversight, compliance requirements, and ongoing staffing commitments. Once built, that system does not scale cheaply. Before approving this, the board should be asking, what is the projected enrollment growth? What is the per student cost? How will staffing expand over time? And how does this affect overall district flexibility? Especially when at the same time you are discussing reduction classroom teachers and rural academic supports in the Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Mason Allen.
Hello, my name is Mason, and I'm going into 6th grade next year. My parents let me help decide whether I should go to Sturgis or Spearfish. I liked things about both schools. Sturgis has a really good debate and leadership programs, but what really got me excited was STEM. When I saw the robotics team at Spearfish, I thought about how it would be good to get into it because I love building things, programming, and figuring out how stuff works. My dad also asked me to look at the Homeschool Connection program and said he would help find an online STEM and Spanish classes for me. That made me realize how lucky I am to have parents who listen to me and can support the things I want to learn. I know not every kid has that. When I hear about possible cuts and changes, it makes me wonder about other students. Will they still get chances to discover what they love? Will they have the same opportunities to learn new skills and prepare for the future? I know budgets are hard, but students only get one chance at their education. I hope you will think about what is best for kids and protect the opportunities that help us grow. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mason.
Laura Sanders.
Hello, my name is Laura Sandus, and I am the gifted and talented teacher for Meade School District. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk to you tonight. I'm here to urge you to continue supporting and retaining our district's gifted program. I do have a question, and I'm not sure if I can ask it right now. But it was one that we had a conversation about with email. Does the board know when they will make their decision about whether they keep the program or not?
That'd be either on the March or April board meeting.
Okay. It's helpful for me to know that because I have students who have been asking me, and it's been a long year for them wondering. I'd like to address the elephant in the room. To me, it's the sense that the TAG program is inequitable just by its very existence. I don't think it is, but I'm going to explain why some people might think that and why it's not. I think we would all agree that a talented athlete requires proper equipment, proper nutrition, and intense training. The same can be said for gifted musicians, artists, and thespians. A student gifted in academics is no different. That student needs specialized educational tools, accelerated learning, and social-emotional support to prevent burnout or frustration. Just like providing our most talented athletes and artists does not diminish from the other participants in sports and the arts, gifted education isn't about giving one group of students more. It's about giving them what they need. These are students who think differently, who ask questions that would surprise you, and who often struggle to find intellectual peers in the traditional classroom. Without appropriate challenges, many gifted students disengage, lose motivation, and never fully develop the potential that could one day lead them to become innovators, researchers, and leaders in our community. Our gifted program provides these students with the opportunity to learn at the pace and depth that matches their abilities. It fosters creativity, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills. Ultimately, we all benefit from this program when these young minds eventually give back to society. Eliminating or reducing this program will not create equity. It will create neglect for a group whose needs are simply different, not greater. Thank you for considering these points in your decision.
Thank you.
Kimberly Seidel.
Evening. I'm Kimberly. My husband Matt and I are here tonight to support the TAG program. We understand that Mrs. Sandus is choosing early retirement at the end of the school year, and we're so happy for her and her family. I also want to acknowledge all the hard work she's put into this program over the years. She is a tremendous educator and a wonderful individual. Can't say enough about her and how much she means to our kids and our family. We will miss her. Having said that, the TAG program must go on, and I know Laura agrees. The rationale of eliminating this program was grossly oversimplified based on reasoning that eliminating it wouldn't increase homeroom class size or alter homeroom core curriculum. That's it. But what about the educational value of this program? Over the years, Laura's put so much work into TAG. It affects roughly 140 students in our school district every year. Every week, 140 extremely bright students are given a space and a platform to be challenged. Every week, 140 students are given the opportunity to come together with other like-minded students to contemplate and work out difficult problems and solutions. It's a chance for these kids to be themselves and be 100% engaged and motivated. Every week, 140 students look forward to this class. In our experience, the kids would rather miss part of a classroom party than miss out on a tag class. This single class allows kids to feel centered and focused for the entire school week. It means so much to them. I acknowledge what a difficult situation we are all facing when it comes to addressing the current financial shortfalls for our school district. Please remember, you are a board of education. Funding for an educational program like TAG should always take priority over non-educational programs. Funding the salary for one educator that makes such a big impact on the lives of 140 students is imperative. Please vote to continue this program and vote yes to support these bright kids. I'm so tired of our public school systems getting a bad rap. We know what a great education our poor children have received in the Meade School District. We also know how important the TAG program has been in that process. The job of a teacher is not an easy one. Every day they educate a wide variety of students, each with their own individual learning needs. It can be challenging for a homeroom teacher to adequately address each student's needs. This is why we have special education instructors to help assist with students that need IEPs. This is also exactly why our TAG program exists. The program helps meet the needs of our students that need to be challenged academically. The TAG program should be considered a core class for these students. Without the additional challenge, many of these kids become bored and uninterested in the day-to-day classroom setting, resulting in decreased test scores and possible behavioral issues. Please continue to support their education.
Thank you, Ms. Seidel.
Maya Seidel.
Everybody,
Could you restate your name?
I am Matt Seidel. I'm Kimberly's husband. I am the proud parent of now 3 TAG students and one former TAG student. He's no longer. But I just wanted to say, thank you all to y'all who responded to my letter back in October. We've been highly beneficial as a family from the TAG program over the last, 8 years. The story goes, it started for us in 2nd grade. Our son Cole was going to school and was just kind of finding it, I don't know, he just couldn't get up and just didn't like going. And Laura discovered him as part of her educational testing program and said, hey, your kid needs to belong in the TAG program. And it's been huge for us. It was a great program for Cole. He found peers in the school. He found a program that really got him excited about going to school and what he could do. And it was really a huge thing for us. But following behind him, his sisters have benefited. We have 2 girls that are now still in the program. Emma's in 7th grade and Madeline is in 4th grade. And now our kindergartner, Brennan, just qualified for the program. So for us, it's been a great educational program. I'm not sure why this program comes up for the chopping block, but 5 years ago, I gave you guys my Winston Churchill quote. Those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Here we are again, 5 years later, discussing why we should cut the TAG program. And I hope you guys choose not to do it. It's been super valuable for us. It's valuable for all the kids that need it. I think it's a really good value. Laura's got a caseload of 140 kids and connects directly one-to-one with all of them. They all love the program. They love what they get out of it. It's very valuable. So I'd encourage you guys to keep it. Even though Laura's retiring, I think it's a fantastic program for the district. We're a lucky district that we have it. So please consider keeping the TAG program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Becky Brooke.
I am here to oppose the removal of staff and teachers from the Union Center School. and the elimination of the music and library classes. In town, open enrollment has our school district scrambling to provide a glamorous plastic turf to attract families to enroll in our schools, while out in the rural, the same school district appears to despise the prospect of families enrolling their children at all. The Union Center School is crowded and understaffed already. The proposed employment cuts on tonight's agenda are ridiculous. My husband, Tom, and I are hardly impressed or attracted to the idea of sending our kids to a school where they will be considered a burden and a stress simply because the district somehow can't afford to supply enough teachers to provide the bare minimum of reading, writing, and arithmetic. I say the bare minimum because, as we all know, the agenda is simultaneously proposing that we cut the music and library classes as well. And why, you might ask, has anyone proposed these cuts? It's called bullying. These classes have always been a blessing and an enrichment to the rural schools. Yes, last fall, some rural families proposed cutting all the specials from all the schools in exchange for keeping all our schools open and providing a solid program of reading, writing, math, and science. Those comments were made as a desperate plea to move those in elected authority to reconsider what a school district's most basic obligation is in the first place. Instead, the Atoll School was closed regardless, and now we have been informed that music and library are being cut because the Hereford School is still open. Every family and employee in this district should take notice of tonight's proposal. Are the students and staff of Meade 46-1 simply monetary digits, or are they persons with rights and dignity? Thank you.
Thank you.
Margaret Fleming.
Good evening. I just want to clarify that I'm the only member of my family prepared to speak. I signed everybody in, but it's just me. Okay. My name is Margaret Fleming, and I'm a parent to two daughters, Fiona and Clodagh, who are also here, in 4th and 2nd grade, respectively. Both are in the TAG program with Laura Sandness, and I'm here today to advocate for this program. Even if it must undergo a change in leadership with Laura's departure, it is an invaluable program that meets a need that no other program does. The goal of education is to meet students where they're at, and with that comes a great deal of disparity. Teachers obviously do the most work to make this happen in the classroom, but there are hired professionals employed for the purpose of serving kids with different developmental needs or kids who are struggling for one reason or another. Shouldn't we also have at least one person dedicated to helping teachers meet the needs of students who are deemed academically gifted? Smart kids are often not given enough direction in the classroom setting because naturally they require less attention and guidance to meet requirements. Best case scenario, cutting TAG would create more work for the classroom teachers if they try to meet the needs of this student population by providing additional enrichment activities and academic challenges. Worst case scenario, these students will become bored, feel neglected, and lose their interest in learning, which is what led them to become high achievers in the first place. The TAG program demonstrates that we don't just value meeting benchmarks, we value helping students to exceed them, to tackle challenges, and to sustain a love for learning. It demonstrates that we have a plan to meet students where they're at on both sides of the median. If anything, I would encourage an expansion of this program so that students can meet with someone like Laura more than once a week. And maybe sometime in the future, I can advocate for that. But for now, please consider the incredible impact that this program has made, not just on the students in the TAG program, but on the community of learners in general, whose value of education is being developed based on how we demonstrate those values in programs like TAG. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Fleming.
There are no more.
Item 6, recognitions. 6A, character education word of the month. The character education trait for the month of February is courtesy, which includes graciousness, politeness, consideration, and good manners. 6B, ASBSD School Board Recognition Week. The Meade School District will join districts across the state to thank school board members for their leadership and service to our district and the community during the South Dakota School Board Recognition Week from February 16th through the 20th, 2026. During the School Board Recognition Week, the Meade School District invites students, staff, and community members to take part in thanking its school board members. Item 7, presentations. Curriculum Director Beth Johnson will present the proposed K4 ELA curriculum.
Good evening. We have been doing some work in ELA, quite a bit of work, in fact. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We started 2 years ago. When I first started with curriculum adoption, I had said 18 months for a cycle of review, and we found right away that literacy was a need, and we started with that with a literacy committee about 2 years ago. The purpose of our new ELA curriculum is to make sure that we are approaching literacy with the most current and best practices. That's highlighted in red because 2 years ago we found that we were not using best practices, not because we meant to, but because the reasoning had changed, the research had changed. And we also need to remain aligned with state and educational standards and replace platforms that are no longer functional. So this is the change. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, we were all taught that the balanced literacy was the way to teach reading. And the graphic on the left is showing you the Venn diagram with the 3 circles overlapping. Basically, the balanced literacy was that if we exposed students to these 3 things, structure of language, visual, so pictures, and then meaning of comprehension, then reading would occur. So that idea is that just exposure alone is how students learn how to read. At the same time, in the early 2000s, another researcher, Scarborough, which is on the right, said no, in fact, reading occurs in a very systematic way. And so looking at the right, I know the text is tiny, but looking at the right side, starting at the bottom, this image is called Scarborough's reading rope. And essentially it says that for a skilled reader to exist, they need to have systematic instruction in word recognition, which is the bottom half of the rope. The word recognition includes sight recognition of words, being able to decode words and the sounds that each letter makes, and then phonological awareness, meaning the sounds that a combination of letters would make. Once we have that, then we can move up to the upper portion of the rope, which is the language comprehension portion, which gets us to actual comprehension or being a skilled reader. And so again, moving from the bottom, it's literacy, knowledge, verbal reasoning, language structures, vocabulary, and then your background knowledge. And those things all combine to create what's considered a skilled reader. This is now the accepted research. Neurologists have studied it. Many educators have studied it, and this is the common understanding of how we teach reading. The state also understands this and adopted a literacy framework in April of 2024. So with that in mind, go ahead and go to the next slide here. I also just wanted to demonstrate the difference, and I'll try to do a good job here, but on the left side, you have what would be considered a balanced literacy text. So this is what we would put in front of a end of first grade, maybe second grade reader. And then on the right side, we have a science of reading text. The difference between the two, and I'll just quickly highlight a couple things, that in the first passage, hen, nest, and den, and those are highly decodable words. I'm sorry, on the right side, on the science of reading side. When we look at the they're called CVC words, so consonant, vowel, consonant words. They're highly decodable, meaning we've taught the sound that each of those letters makes. Therefore, a student who encounters those sounds is going to be successful reading them. In comparison, on the left side, which is a balanced literacy side, we do have some CVC words in there, but we also have some 4-letter words such as hive, spider, and mouse. Those are words that are maybe out of reach for those students. And what we did was encourage them to look at the pictures to learn how to read. Well, they still need to learn how to sound out spider, right? So that's a general difference. So the basic structure of the words, but the sentence structure themselves. On the left side, the structure changes for students. And so we know that reading emerges as we start to understand patterns. And so on the right side, we have the same pattern again and again. So subject, verb, object, subject, verb, object. So the students start to understand how language is formed as well. And so that's the difference in what we currently have in our classrooms on the left versus what we need to have in our classrooms on the right. So that's your crash course in science of reading. Before I move further, are there any questions? And Christian, if you don't mind, go ahead and slide into the next slide. Any questions?
I just have a statement. Let's be clear. This isn't new. This is money had a lot to do with why we're doing it the way we're doing it. So the way we learn, most of us at this table learn, is what we should have, mostly what we should have been doing. So can we go back 2 years and just start doing this? I'm kidding. We can't.
I know.
But
yeah. Well, I always think, hooked on phonics, learning to read, that was like, right? We all learned how to read that way. Balanced literacy, there was a lot of money thrown into it and it got wide recognition and all the curriculum companies adopted it. It was out there in all of our preparatory programs. And so we thought we were being presented with best research. So Brian, thank you for clarifying that. This is our existing K-5 curriculum. Any other questions on science of reading? Okay. This is our current curriculum. I put buffet in quotes because I was in the room when our trainer said, this is a buffet of instructional choices that you can make as the teacher, which now when you ask our teachers, how's the buffet going? They're like, it's so overwhelming because they recognize that it's a really disjointed buffet. These things don't quite connect. And so they've made a lot of instructional decisions trying to serve our students in the best way possible, which means pulling different resources from many different sites like Teachers Pay Teachers, which has really impacted alignment in K4. All the teachers it's kind of every man for themselves. They're doing a great job, but we would like to do better by them, right? By providing better curriculum. There is no systematic phonics instruction. They're leveled texts instead of decodable texts, and there isn't any support for struggling readers. We tell them to look at the pictures. So that's what we currently have. It's not a bad curriculum. It's just not how we teach reading. Please, thank you. Okay. I already mentioned this. I'll just hit this briefly. This is the spring of 2024, the South Dakota Literacy Framework, which is where our group started. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. I don't need to spend a lot of time on that. We use the South Dakota Literacy Framework in addition to the Reading League Science of Reading rubric. That it's a nonprofit organization online that kind of vets these curriculums for best practices. So we referred to that. We also referred to education.org, which is another nonprofit that evaluates curriculum. And we only looked at curriculum that was Science of Reading aligned according to those nonprofits, but also in looking at the literacy framework from the state. The original members of the literacy committee, and this is just to show you, we had a lot of people looking at this. We started out with the administrators, Chantel Leitenberg, Amanda Christensen, Shelley Mickelson, Melissa Pankratz, and myself, when we were the literacy committee getting ready to align to the science or the literacy framework from the state. We also had teachers Sherry Isaacson, Allison Schubauer, Becca Smith, and Julie Molman. Plus, we have another slide, go ahead and go to that one, of what ended up becoming the review committee. The literacy team immediately recognized we had a real problem with our current curriculum, which is why we moved ELA up in the adoption process. We got lucky. They chose, and I said this last month, for science, they chose a curriculum that we already had. So there's no new learning for the teachers there. So that made room for new learning, and it allows us to go ahead and move forward and address this need that we really do have. it looks kind of spread out here, but this is just to show you that we had teachers from every grade level and from every school in that covered some of these grade levels. We had more representation in Sturgis Elementary, but they were title, and it's hard to pilot when you don't have a classroom. And then we didn't have any. We had brand new 5th grade teachers at Sturgis or at Stage Barn, so that's the gap there. But that's our committee. Thank you. Okay. Our rubric, so we use the rubrics provided by these nonprofits, but then we also created our own needs assessment, which is what we always do, what's missing or lacking in our current curriculum, to even see if we need to do a review. As in Mystery Science, we didn't need to because it was already meeting our needs. But this was the criteria that we came up with. Alignment was number 1, and alignment to science of reading. So from in order of importance, we looked at alignment, assessment, accessibility, text, diversity, professional learning, and student engagement. Okay, this data is not complete, so don't get excited. I just want to make that clear. We are on a timeline, and my teachers are still piloting magnetic literacy. And so it looks like the shining star here only because I only have 2 teachers who have responded. Next month, when they're done, you will get the completed graph so you can see the whole thing. But I just want to point that out right away. We had our prioritized requirements. We piloted 3 separate curriculum, and we chose 3 because magnetic lit wasn't actually available until January. So we were able to look at it last spring and this fall, but for piloting purposes was not available to us until January. The teachers really wanted to look at this one because it aligns to iReady, which is a tool that we're currently using. So they're currently piloting magnetic lit. We did look at MyView. They piloted that at the beginning of the year. After they finished piloting MyView and Amplify, they did do the rubric. This is from the rubric, but I asked them informally I said, if you had to drop one of these choices, which one would you drop? And those who answered the survey, which was a little over half of the committee, unanimously said, we're going to drop MyView because it looks like a buffet. So they immediately removed that one, leaving Amplify in the running. And then, of course, the results are showing us that Amplify was always in the running anyway. And then when I have the results for magnetic lit, I will make sure that you have those as well. Okay, here's the difference between the 2. And it is a difference. They're both very science of reading aligned. We're excited about both of them, so it's going to be a hard choice for our teachers. But magnetic literacy emphasizes thinking curriculum. It's explicitly fostering inquiry and discussion and writing and making meaning alongside of the skills that the students are learning. So questions that students get to explore. On the Amplify side, it's a knowledge-driven literacy. When I observed classrooms piloting this material, I saw, which was awesome to see, we saw science and social studies embedded in the ELA curriculum. So that's really what Amplify is. It's kind of a cross-cutting, teaching all of the other content areas while also teaching our science of reading skills that we need, or our phonics skills and that systematic instruction that we're looking for. So they're very different approaches, both very much aligned. And so the teachers, we are meeting to make a decision, which one is the best one for us, which of these different approaches to teaching reading is going to be the best one for us. But I want you to see, we also came up with, this is basically saying the same thing, but this literacy group that I worked with, we did come up with a vision for literacy for Meade. And what we really wanted was to, in order to develop resilient lifelong readers and learners, we want to equip teachers with high quality literacy education strategies and cultivate a collaborative literacy environment, where the resilient would apply to the magnetic literacy portion, and lifelong would be like that content knowledge, right? Tapping into what students really want to, you're a reader if you're interested in what you're reading. So that's really, both of these align with our vision. And so I just wanted to point that out. So thank you. Here is, it's an odd recommendation tonight because I am on a timeline. I would very much like to make sure that our teachers have the opportunity to have the curriculum in March for our March in service. And so decisions need to be made prior to March. So here we are. I'm in front of you tonight presenting 2 potential curriculums. Next month, I will have the final one in for your review. But this is what we would be getting with either of them because we've asked for both of these things. For both, we would get student licenses to their online platform for students, consumable student interactive textbooks, and decodable student texts. So the difference between level readers and decodables. Okay. And then for teachers, we would have digital licenses to the online platform, which includes access to a wide variety of instructional materials, including leveled materials, Tier 1, Tier 2, an on-demand professional learning library. That was a must. I asked both curriculum companies, I said, we need training and we can't always afford to bring you down here. You should have a video library of training, and they do, both of them, very robust. And then pre-made literacy kits with all the visual aids. So teaching students the, sound, holding up sound cards for our teachers so that they can do that work. My recommendation, it's a one-time expenditure for 6 years. Magnetic came in at $417,000 and $417,020.40. And Amplify came in much higher. I am still working with Amplify, and she sent me she said, we want to be competitive. So I expect their number to come down. But they came in at $471,000, $471,505.47. So those are the two that we are looking at. Like I said, I do think Amplify is going to be able to get a little closer to Magnetic. And so then I will put that in front of you for an action item next month. And I think my last slide. Yes. What questions do you have for me?
I might have a couple.
Please
All right.
do.
So number one, how much time are we going to have to give teachers to get on board if they're not already? Most of them went to college. Reading teachers did not learn any of this, Craig. So what's the time frame? Like over how long? And how many additional days and or dollars is it going to cost to train teachers and get them on board with this?
Sure. That's a really good question. So we actually knew this problem existed a while ago. And I've already started training teachers. We brought in Compass to do Science of Reading. We called it Science of Reading Crash Course, 3 hours. Everybody in the district got the 3-hour crash course. That was in October of last year. So we have the foot in the door there. We've also been doing book studies the last 4 years, where almost all of the elementary teachers, and I've been keeping track, so it's like a handful that have not, have done reading or shifting the balance, which is it's moving away from balanced literacy to science of reading. So shifting the balance in K2 or 3-5, those book studies. We also did Reading Above the Fray, which is another book study. Most of our teachers are feeling pretty good in the elementary, are feeling pretty good about it. I think where the burden would come in would be middle school, high school. And to address that, we have a literacy grant. And so we're partnering with Black Hills State University, and we won't be doing it next year because we want to avoid overwhelm. We heard our teachers. So we'll do our new curriculum training next year. And then the following year, they'll be participating in a book study with Black Hills State that's going to lead them through, it's going to dovetail PLCs in with reading and writing in the science of reading practices. So good, and that's covered. It's covered by the grant. So
the Department of Education has a lot of free training and opportunities right now too on the science of reading and their literacy initiative.
Yep. That's all part of the literacy framework. Yeah. Thank you, Scotty.
Over how long? I'm assuming we're going to see some reading gains, probably. I would bet early elementary. I'm assuming that like in the next 3 years, we'll see if how beneficial this is, like how much it actually makes a difference. I would guess that will be the case for our younger readers.
Yes. And actually in my board report, I don't know if you got the chance to take a look at it, but I did put some graphics in there for you. We are already making gains because the teachers have been doing, we adopted through title funds 4 years ago, Hello Literacy, which is just a phonics program. And we see it now moving, the skills are now moving down into the grade levels that they need to be in because of this direct systematic instruction. So hopefully, Mr. Voigt, in answer to your question, yes, the answer is yes, we hope so.
You also asked how much time we give our teachers. Not nearly enough, to be honest with that. If you do a new curriculum adoption, all your teachers should have about 10 hours every summer, regardless of whether new or old, 7 years in. A new curriculum adoption should be about 40 extra hours in the summer, usually paid, followed by the follow-up year after they've done the first year implementation, a 30-hour paid time to reevaluate the changes that take place, and then 10 hours every summer after that to continue to improve. That's what we should be doing. If you look at a curriculum cycle of that, and we were on track to start moving in that direction with our staff development funds, and we are unable to grow those funds, and we'll actually have to reduce those funds over time here because of budget constraints. But
Yes.
that's how we should be doing the curriculum cycle to make the biggest impact for our teachers to have time and make that impact with students.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah.
With this being an action item in March, you mentioned that you wanted the curriculum by March for in-service in March. Is that going to be enough time?
The vendors are aware. Yeah.
Okay.
They know. And so what would happen is we've already reserved the date with both of them, and they're ready to ship teaching materials, but not the student materials. So we would have what we need for the March training.
Perfect.
But yes, it's a timeline. And I just didn't want to. They really felt strongly about magnetic literacy just from what they saw. I didn't want to rush our teachers. This needs to have our time. And so that's why the weird double presentation tonight, because I wanted to give them a little bit more time, but I also need to make sure I'm hitting all the milestones with what we need to do as a board. So you're welcome. Other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 8, action items. 8A, Stage Barn Middle School Custodial Services, RFP 26A. Business Manager Brett Burdett is requesting authorization to advertise for bids for the Stage Barn Middle School Custodial Services contract for the 26-27 and 27-28. The ad will run 3/4/2026 to 3/11/2026, and the bids are due to the business office by 2 p.m. on 3/26/2026. Bids will be presented to the board for review and approval on 4/13/2026. Do I have a motion? Megan with the motion. Tom with the second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 8B, Piedmont Valley Elementary Custodial Services, RFP 26B. Business Manager Brett Burdett is requesting authorization to advertise for bids for the RFP 26B PVE Custodial Services contract for the 26-27 and 27-28 school years. The ads will run 3/4/2026 through 3/11/2026 with bids due to the business office by 2:30 p.m. on 3/26/2026. And the bids will be presented to the school board for review and approval on 4/13/2026. Do I have a motion? Tom with the motion. Terry with the second. Any discussion?
Really, the only thing you need to know about Piedmont is right now our current contract has two components. Because it was traditionally just night shift services, and when we couldn't hire the day shift, we added an addendum to it. Now this new contract will just be built in together. It's for day and night services through those 2 or 3 years of that contract. So really the only change there.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 8C, Sturgis Elementary Custodial Services, RFP 26C. Business Manager Brett Burdett is requesting authorization to advertise the Stell Custodial Services, RFP 26C on 3/4/2026 and 3/11/2026, and bids are due to the business office by 3 p.m. on 3/26/2026. Bids will be presented to the board on 4/13/2026 for review and approval. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Scotty with the motion.
Second.
Terry with the second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 8D, advertisement for bids, Piedmont Valley Elementary re-roofing project. The Business Office and Building and Grounds Department are requesting authorization to advertise for bids for the re-roofing of Piedmont Valley Elementary and to approve the contract. Bid advertisements will run on 2/18/2026 and 2/25/2026 with bids accepted until March 3rd, 2026. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Terry with the motion. Brian with the second. Any discussion?
Curious about how, what kind of shape that roof is in currently?
It's in a shape where it needs to start to be replaced, Tom. It is 1 year newer than Sturgis Elementary, and Low Roofing told us we should have replaced Sturgis Elementary 3 years ago. And so about one action item, you'll be doing the last component of Sturgis Elementary, and they're in similar shape. Piedmont's just starting to leak a little bit more every year, where Sturgis Elementary had been leaking, Mrs. Lightenberg, for several years now. So we got behind the 8 ball on Sturgis Elementary. We would like not to get behind the 8 ball on Piedmont Valley Elementary.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 8E, approve Low Roofing Incorporated proposal. The Business Office and Buildings and Grounds Department are requesting the board to accept the proposal from Low Roofing Incorporated in the amount of $98,945 for the Sturgis Elementary Kitchen re-roofing project. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Terry with the motion. Brian with the second. Any discussion?
This project is actually coming in at a very good price. Low Roofing has been in business for a very long time in the Black Hills. They're a very reputable deal, and they've given us a very good deal on the last 2 years on Sturgis Elementary's roof. This proposal is about $11.66 a square foot, and we're hoping Piedmont comes close to that. And so, again, when a project or an improvement exceeds $100,000, by state bid law, you have to bid it. And so Low Roofing has worked very hard to work with us to try to get these costs down to where we can have them finish this project. This will be phase 3 of that roof project what Low Roofing has done for us. And so we're very happy. I believe the results have been very good at Sturgis Elementary on the areas that have been completed. So
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 8F, approved Dakota Bus Agreement. Business Manager Brett Burdett and Superintendent Wayne Wormstead request board approval of the agreement and Dakota Bus for student transportation services effective July 1, 2026 through June 20th, 2029. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Brian with the motion. Megan with the second. Any discussion?
The costs are going to be considerably higher. Do you know what percentages?
I think net was at $150,000, $200,000 more right in the area.
not 200. We are with the amended.
Oh, the amended part, yeah.
Remember the amended part because of route where we were down. So it's probably going to be about $120,000 increase in cost.
And then we're looking at, we take on all the fuel costs straight through, but we don't have to worry about an escalator cost, and we get full savings if fuel prices go down. That's the biggest changes in that contract for the Transportation Committee to look at.
So again, the component in your contract, the original proposal was a $3.90 base fuel contract, okay? With a straight pass-through cost, if fuel gets below that, we will realize the immediate savings by less expensive fuel. Where if we would have done it traditional way, there was essentially very limited credits back on lower fuel, and then you paid a formulated increased cost. So we're hoping if things go well the next 2 years, we will see some savings in fuel, so that $120,000 will not be the actual cost. But we won't know that until we get through 10 to 12 months of buying fuel on a monthly basis. So
Would the reverse also happen if it goes up in price?
Yeah, we're no worse off than we were with the prior contract with Harlow's about pricing going up. We had to eat that cost if prices went up. So with the previous contract, we did not see the full benefit of fuel savings. So with this contract, we can actually see the fuel savings costs in diesel. And right now, if we had that contract right now, we'd save some money this last year considerably as fuel prices were down.
And we may save money also through not paying tax on that fuel, or do we know more details
that's
on that?
only if we buy. And so there's several components. And again, we've been talking about our ability that if we would just buy the fuel, All right, the district buys the fuel. Obviously, we do not pay sales tax. That takes on a whole nother level of acquisition. Okay, that means you have to either have enough credit cards to put in every bus, and you have to bid the fuel as well. So you have to, one, identify what locations they can fuel at by the bid process, and two, provide them a means of acquiring that. And the amount of credit cards or gas cards it would take is quite a step to take for the staff in the business office at that point. We're not quite sure, Justin, what that would amount to. I've tried to slow Wayne down a little bit there, and allow us just to do the pass-through fuel in the contract. And if it looks like fuel is going to be where it's at, or we have a good fit with Dakota Bus a year or two down the road, we could potentially look at bidding fuel and doing the payment process through a gas card. So I would like to take one step at a time and get into the new contract and make sure that goes well first. But yes, there could be some savings.
We want to really make sure that the hours we put into tracking that is actually going to pay a dividend on the fuel long term, and not just be an additional employee that eats up that savings cost, versus if we don't have to do the work, where's that wash at in the long term for it? So we'll be monitoring that, see which way is the best way to go.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 8G, approve the 26-27 academic calendars. Superintendent Wayne Wormstead has provided the proposed 26-27 school academic calendars for the board approval. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Brian with the motion.
Second.
Terry with the second.
Okay, so after looking at many calendar options and then looking at the modified 4-day week, I went back and looked at our survey results from our teachers and looked at, says, how do we find better work balance within this for that? So the first thing you'll notice is that we're actually going to do a flex day, staff development day. We spend between 6 and 8 hours allowing teachers every year to set up their classroom or prep for the start of the school year. We're basically going to say as soon as about the last week of July that they have access to the rooms, they may use that time as they see fit, as long as the room is ready to go by the 24th, prior to any time that we have in-service starting for that. That'll be the first thing. You'll notice second thing on the calendar is the 27th is our start date. That's because we have a very late start due to the rally this year. In order to get days in before that and still to have our corresponding graduation and look at our continued effort on some other areas here for snow days, I'm going to sort of walk through the different changes we did past that. So we do have an earlier start date. We ended all of our trimesters, okay, on a Friday, and we'll have an early release to allow free work time for every teacher or staff member for that. As one of those things that we saw as work time between trimesters as a concern with that. We also have an early out on the 25th for homecoming. And then we have an early out November 4th. We'll again do our reunification process for school safety, evacuation process we did last year, and walk through that entire process again as we continue to train for safe reunification of all of our students in case of a crisis emergency with their parents. One of the detriments to this calendar you look at, which is I've heard plenty about, is not having 2 full weeks off for Christmas, but that turns around to look at not taking away days for holidays for snow days. So if you continue to look through, you'll see the trimester, of course, in February ends, and that's an early out that day, and then you go all the way to the end of the year. What I did build in here, because way the calendar falls this year uniquely, we have about 8 weeks, 7 weeks straight of 5-day weeks. I did some research on schools that actually have days on their calendars that are considered days off if there's no snow makeup days, and that way they're planned 3-day weekends, but everybody knows those are our makeup days. Knowing that we can take 2 or 3 days and not make up, plus these 3, we can actually suffer through 6 days of winter. And if we went 9 days or 10 days, we'd be looking at that last week, adding those days on along the 25th, 26th in May moving forward. As in any calendar, there's things people like, and there's people they just do not like. So trying to find that work balance, allow parents to set and know that our holiday weekends are our holiday weekends and they're not going to be snow makeup days with that, and where we're looking at our best days to make up or the nicest days in the year, hopefully in April and May. If not needed, we get a 3-day weekend.
Can you tell us what the last day of school is? Because I don't.
May 25th.
Thank you.
26 is our in-service day, which is turned into our staff banquet celebration at the end of the year in the morning of, and that's checkout day for that, where we go back and celebrate all the great things our staff has done, and also our retirees, and that retirement breakfast. Questions on the calendar?
This calendar, along with some options, went out to the staff to look at.
So the calendar committee actually sent some options earlier. I took those plus some of the survey results and created this calendar. This calendar was not put to a vote, but I did take feedback from the staff on it. And since this calendar has been released to the staff, there's positive comments and there's negative comments, as with any calendar with this. So trying to find that balance of when we listen to our employee engagement survey across the board and meet our instructional hours of that, this is what I came up with to meet that balance for time, support our staff.
And this has to be approved tonight.
Nope, you have until April. Just that we have a lot of parents wanting to plan next year's 3-day weekends and everything else for trips and vacations on this. You can table this till next month. I just put it on action in case you want to take action on this. And the real calendar is built off the same calendar. Shelley's taken this and transferred it over there. You look at, we have 169 days on this calendar and we have 149 days on the other. And we're usually between 149 and 150, depends on what we need for staff development. I kept an extra day of staff development because of the stuff we're doing with the curriculum and other items there. Mrs. Johnson would like to have about 3 more days of staff development put in there, of course. Also, we did not continue late starts. Our feedback on that was less than popular from our parents and our staff on that. So it read on purpose. So we listened to what the trial year result and said, okay, we won't put the late starts in. Early releases were much more popular for that, especially Friday early releases for our staff and end of trimesters. You do have a motion on the floor, so you either need a table or take action on that.
Hearing no debate. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 9, discussion items. 9A, Sturgis Brown High School haying lease agreement. Business manager Brett Burdett is requesting authorization to extend the haying lease with Nick Uherka for an additional 1-year term to allow time to evaluate the direction and needs of the FFA program.
So again, not an action item. I believe you were given copies of the current hay agreement with Nick. All right. He and I are in current discussion right now of what we need to do with that stand of grass at the high school. It is old and it produces on a very good year, just shy of a ton an acre. Okay, so it's not real attractive for people to come out. We're thinking about maybe trying fertilizing it with some nitrogen this year. But the FFA program is also looking at doing some small livestock things. And so if they're going to be in need of some feed during the winter, then I want to make sure I have the flexibility to work with a producer who has connections to the district so he could maybe get a little bit of hay off that, but yet maybe we take some of that hay and give it to the high school for them to work with. So by having that flexibility, it allows me to maybe wheel and deal a little bit with somebody to start to benefit the FFA program, and then maybe make a little bit more of a long-term range on what that stand looks like 5 years from now. And that might be spraying it out, farming it a year or two with no-till, letting those kids get an idea of what that looks like, and then coming back in with a hay crop that they could utilize in their program, as well as a cash crop for the program as well, or the district. So just discussion item. If there's no opposition to that, I'll bring that back as an action item to negotiate with Nick on what that looks like for the next year or so. No, I think there's 40, something like that. Some of it goes back in behind the fair building, so their lease kind of overlaps in there a little bit. But they built into our lease with the Meade County Fair is a multiple use component where we get to hay it and then keep that product off there, and they get to utilize that space for parking, et cetera, like that. So I believe it's plus or minus 40. You take those trees and out there, Tom, it's somewhere in that. So not a huge amount.
So it's less than $2,000 a year.
Yeah, I think this year was like $1,300, Justin, something like that.
I think he's a good resource in the district. I think he'd help our students out if need to be. He has a connection.
I do. So, once we get a plan in place, then we'll bring Nick in and see what his thoughts are. And at least for a year, it buys me a little time to work with Strand and the high school as well. So.
9B, Sturgis Elementary Playground Project. The attached documents, including the project proposal, site layout, new equipment dimensions, and images of the proposed equipment, will be reviewed in preparation for further discussion. The goal is to bring this project back in March for further consideration and authorization to sign a contract and lock in pricing.
So what's on the screen right now is the last proposal. I believe that was updated as of January 21st, 2026. And it walks through the program in terms of what the equipment costs are, freight, things will be provided in there. What I like to do so much is to go to the site, is that site plan, Tanya, and actually show you where it's at. And if you haven't been up to Sturgis Elementary or know where the playground's at, we would like to identify where this equipment is going to go. And so it's not great, but this sits kind of back to the northeast of the building. This is existing concrete pad with the basketball courts on it. And then equipment, we got some swings here, some devices here, and here. These have to go. This one might stay. The swing sets have to go. These devices, this equipment over here has to go. It's all outdated. Okay, we can't repair it. We can't replace it. It's non-compliant in terms of ADA. So the idea was, when this started clear back in October, was to buy a kind of a one large set of things that aren't spread out, that will be compliant and be utilized. And so we're proposing to go right here. And so this is where the proposed new playground equipment will go. Again, these will be removed. This will have to have some new material put underneath it. The swings will have to go. They'll be gone. New swings will then be coming on the edge over here of the proposed playground. And so that's the location that it's going to go. The next one talks about the size of the area that's impacted. I think you guys all have those in your packets. All right. This project has been discussed at length with the committee. The area impacted is 60 by 100. Okay, the equipment will sit on a 60 by 100 area. The swing sets will sit on the west side.
The dimensions right there.
Yeah. And so if you can imagine that concrete pad was sitting right in here with the basketball hoops on, the new playground area will be just right next to it. All right. We needed to put some area that had decent access to it in terms of surfacing. If you've been to Sturgis Elementary, it sits kind of down in a bowl. There's a lot of mud and pea gravel, so we think access off of that concrete to this area will help keep the surface of that new playground area cleaner anyway. And so the area you see that is in tan will be a engineered wood fiber, and the area that was in green will be a synthetic surface. Okay, and so that has about a 15-year life expectancy on that. And again, with the proposal, there's the equipment there. And so as you can go back, again, the tan area to the end is where the new swing sets will go, and then the rest of it will be sitting on the synthetic surface, with about 6 apparatuses that are ADA compliant, from sensory to physical handicaps to whatever, identified there.
Only the section inside the black is actually synthetic turf.
Yeah.
The outside is not.
Yeah,
That's
again,
just the picture.
By 100. Okay, so when we looked at that first site plan, it'll be the area that's going to house this equipment is 60 by 100.
Any comments from Buildings and Grounds Committee as we presented this to you guys?
So I think it's really important. And one of the questions I had in Buildings and Grounds was, how long does a playground set actually last? Like, we assume that we put these things up and they last forever, hopefully like our buildings, but realistically, there's something that need to be serviced on a regular basis and as we have parts, and then there's a lifespan to them, and Sturgis Elementary has by far outlived its lifespan. And then on top of that, we have to become ADA compliant in these playgrounds so that more students can be on these playgrounds. When it comes to both Sturgis Elementary and Piedmont Valley, when we're looking at both of those, both of them are not in real good places for a playground. And what I mean by that is water runs into both of those locations. So doing an engineered fill really doesn't work because all that water runoff is going to wash out all of our engineered fill. Anybody who's ever seen a wood chipped garden area at the bottom of a hill and then the roads filled with wood chips would be what our playground would look like. So going to a synthetic surface is the middle ground to what we could put on there. It would be reliable. It would sustain the different environments that it'd be in. And it would allow access to students onto it. So I think it's important to upgrade. The next level up is actually a poured rubber surface. So if you go to some of the new apartment complexes that are being built, they're starting to do the poured rubber, which is extremely expensive compared to the synthetic surface. So we've spent a lot of time looking at this. I think it's important that we move forward with it and provide that opportunity for those students to get on a playground set that's safe for them to be on. It gives them access to be on it, and that we don't have to figure out how to sweep up synthetic wood chips.
Yeah, and so we'll be partnering with Skull Construction. Skull will come in probably in June and do the excavation for this material. Our crew will start to do the demolition on some of the other equipment once school is out. Removal of the peak gravel and new site preparation. Sometime after July 1 then is dependent upon if the project gets approval from the board and we are able to sign a contract next month. We can lock in final pricing and then get that on a schedule.
And Skull is donating the dirt work.
Skull's donating the dirt work, yes.
I don't know if I was in, I obviously missed last Buildings and Ground meeting, but I don't know if it has been asked, or it probably has been. Ms. Leitenberg, Ms. Judding, does this fulfill the need for your kids? Does it replace what we need to take out of there?
After doing the survey with our committee and they looked over our things, there's a lot of things that need to be pulled out. So we wouldn't have anything for the kids to play with if we take everything that we were told that needs to be taken out. And a lot of the stuff that we had was from the original elementaries when it used to be a grade level all over the building. So the silver little monkey bars you see, they're 50 plus years old.
Thank you.
Also like to say that, secondary to education, the active kids playground is a priority of the school system, a priority of mine, and a safe place for them to play.
And again, this is Sturgis Elementary is the starting point. Obviously, it's not the only one that will be getting addressed. The consultants have been down to Piedmont looking at that and putting proposals together. We're out at Central Meade, we're at Whitewood. We'll be looking at all those and bringing those back over the course of time to get everything up and ready to go.
And this is I don't think we mentioned it's a capital outlay project. It is not general fund, which is our staffing. So.
Any questions? If there's no questions tonight, again, I'm going to bring it back as an action item next month to authorize us to enter into contract with this company to lock in pricing and get a schedule set up.
I think we got to change the colors to red and black so it matches Scoopers, but more the black than the red. 9C, Sturgis Williams Middle School and Williams Administrative Building Electrical System Upgrade Proposal. Skyline Engineering Incorporated has provided a professional services agreement for electrical upgrades at Sturgis Williams Middle School and the administration building, including architectural fees and lighting design and battery backed up emergency and exit lighting as an alternative to the life safety generator system.
So a year ago, we had Skyline come in and start doing electrical assessments of our oldest buildings. And they came out and said, here's things that we see as concern, here's your non-compliance. And then we went out and tried to get a couple of agencies to help us. We had to build the specifications. We don't have any engineers on staff. And so based on the areas that were non-compliant, we're talking about replacement of major panels, electrical panels, where they're going to have to be designed. There's going to have some engineering and some drafting and architectural work done in there to make sure that they're carrying the loads and capacities we need to take these buildings into the next 50 years. Again, we're talking about this building at Sturgis Williams Middle School, the two oldest buildings we have in operation right now. So the proposal came back. They're always higher than you want them to be. But for them to decide, I never got one of these back that I felt we were getting, a cut rate deal. And so There aren't any electrical engineering companies in Sturgis, so Rapid City is that kind of market we look at. Skyline has been the engineer on Stage Barn Middle School and the last 3 construction projects we have. They work in conjunction with Arc Inc., so we're very familiar with their work, very familiar with their staff. The other people we sent the information to did not return a proposal. So this is what we bring forward to the board to consider, that we would bring back then next month to say authorize us to enter into a contract for them to start building the documents that we can go out and start advertising this project. They're telling me the major stuff, the big panels are 5 to 6 months out. So obviously it's going to be past our timeline next summer, but we'll try to build them into the calendar year based on what kind of impact they have on the school, or we'll have to finish them then in June. Okay. Any questions on what we're talking about? So we're talking about major electrical panels, big G panels, the old stuff we have has got to come out. New generators. I think we discovered that our existing generators, when the power came out the other day, they don't run very much. And so the new ones have to be sized based on the systems that Mr. Wheeldryer wants to have work in an emergency. Okay, lights, heating, et cetera, water, whatever that is. There's going to be some emergency lighting in there. But it'll be a very comprehensive. At that point then, these buildings, when it comes time for insurance inspections, which we have every year, we should not have any issues with them being up to code for insurability standpoints in terms of electrical. Then the next project after that will be the high school and those buildings out there. They are the next aged facilities we have to look at. We have a proposal in capital outlay for those buildings. So based on what this one came in at, I did a minor change and increased that one to roughly what this is. So, but this one will be hired to bring back in March to approve this proposal to allow me to enter into an agreement to start Skyline working on this project. Any questions?
How in depth do you need to go? I mean, is it wiring in the walls, or is it just like the main boxes?
So a lot of the new additions have new wiring in them, and Lee, so it's really down there, probably looking at those boxes. Well, that's the things they'll find out when we get into what's in those boxes, what the wiring is, and some things like that. If you've ever been down in the boiler room down here, you know,
Don't touch the boxes, you might get shocked.
Well, to a point, we're not even sure what's active, what's inactive.
We have boxes that are terminated. We have boxes that are live.
You know,
we
you have to
need
remember the last 40 years with when the closed circuit stuff, TV came in, there's all kinds of coax down there. We don't know what's dated, what's been vacated. This will help clean those up, plus make those new boxes available. So the project costs, we're hoping, you know, in the budget, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I think we have it Sturgis Williams here, 90,000, but we're going to throw a generator in there, so we've got $115,000 budgeted. I think we'll be below that because their proposal included GFI receptacles and everything, and that's some of the stuff our staff is going to try to tackle. We're just going to hire them to do the major things. And then Sturgis Williams, we're looking at $127,000, and that includes the generator as well.
Does this come with any kind of warranty?
Well, the panels will come with the kind.
We do some of the stuff, and they do some of their stuff.
Well, so that's why we don't touch the main panels, okay? Because if you're not a certified electrician or a professional engineer to design these, then you void the warranties on the equipment that's installed. Changing a receptacle, we have a licensed electrician. He can do those things, okay? He's licensed to do those things. We're not licensed to remove the size of panels that are in these electrical rooms. We do not have that capacity or skill set. And if we tried to do that, then again, right, you say those warranties are voided, and then our insurance company will not cover anything that might happen. It's kind of like being your own plumber if you're not a plumber. So that's Tom exactly why we have to spend the money to do these things in this capacity.
$9D, fiscal year 27 capital outlay budget review. Business Manager Brett Burdett will review the following documents with the board: Department of Revenue maximum capital outlay levy worksheet, capital outlay revenue budget, and capital outlay expenditure budget.
So Tanya, if we can look at that max levy worksheet. So every year, everybody gets their properties assessed. Those valuations go to the county. The county then certifies those, shoots them down to the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue says, yes, they agree, they're equalized. And then we get the sheets that basically say, based on 25 pay 26 valuations, based on the statutes that were put into place in 2017, school districts can request the following levies up to the following maximums, but cannot exceed those. You can't see this color coded, but the one column says if it's got to be the lesser of the two options. One is the $3 million per $1,000 valuation. The one on the right is $38.69 per student, and typically those are your small districts. All right. So depending upon where you sit and the valuations come in, Department of Revenue takes a look at your enrollments that are submitted to the state every year, says your district falls into one of these two categories in terms of what you can levy for capital outlay money for 25 pay 26. Okay? And so our district falls down there with growth on pay 26 at 1.8%. The maximum we can levy is $7,942,427. Okay? So the last 3 or 4 months, the Finance Committee and working with the Buildings and Grounds Committee has been going over and say, where do we need to be in terms of a district to cover all those things that we're talking about wanting to do, whether it be working with Mrs. Johnson in curriculum or Mr. Will Dreyer in Buildings and Grounds. What do we need to do to keep the district up and going? Okay? And so that conversation has been going forward. At the last finance meeting, the recommendation was if things are going to happen in Pierre, which are going to cap this, maybe the district should be in a position to be at $7,942,000 at the maximum. Okay? So the revenue budget I have prepared has been amended, and if we could go to that one, Tanya, the revenue. Ooh, it's bad. Right. So the line we're looking at is those top two. Okay. So we get taxes in two different categories, ad valorem and then ad valorem mobile homes. But you really got to add those two together, and that's really what our tax levy would be. So at the very bottom, it breaks down. You have to remember our tax years and our budget years do not align. All right. The tax years are January to December. Our budget year is July to June. So every year, every July, when we make that request, we don't really see the full impact of that for 18 months because taxes are paid in arrears. And so when we look at if we were to levy $7,942,000, the bottom breaks that down. Where would that revenue come from? So the first half comes from pay 20, 25, pay 26, and that levy was requested on July of 2025 at $7.5 million. If we were to request $7,942,000, half of that would be $3,971. You combine those two together, and based on the budget year 26-27, theoretically you could receive $7,721,000 of capital outlay revenue. Okay, does that make sense? So that's the discussion we're having. At some point, you're going to get a recommendation from the Finance Committee and my office that we want you to levy the maximum amount. Okay, that's what this budget is built on. So we're anticipating if we do that in July, next year's budget based on some of the things we have going on, some fund balance being brought in, we're looking at it generating about $8.8 million of revenue. Again, $650,000 of that you already have in the bank. Okay, you can't count revenue twice. So that's why we call it fund balance. It's savings we're going to bring back in to pay for a portion of the budget that we're going to approve or ask you to approve. That's what the revenue looks like, folks. It's been kind of a common theme, has been moving around, but I think the more we talked about it, the more we start to looking at that maximum amount based on the fear that there's going to be something done in Pierre that's going to cap that or cap our ability to grow if we need to grow.
And also afford future fund balance transfers from capital outlay to general fund to support our teaching staff and our facilities and our staff that takes place in our classrooms. We're looking at next year a $350,000 transfer right now, plus another $100,000 to pay for the early retirement incentives that we did.
A year ago, the board that was the elected board at that point, when we started suggesting these increased levies, wanted to know what the money was going to be for. And they weren't supportive of just haphazardly raising the levy. They wanted to know specifically, where is this money going to go if we are to ask our patrons and taxpayers to pay it? And so we looked at a diagram last month, and we identified 4 areas where this would go. The first levy went to school security. All right, and that levy was about $125,000 a year we've been spending on school-related security, strictly. The next levies came in were going to be for potential acquisition of land, or it could be for self-insurance of buildings in the general fund if our premiums get so high and we need to start raising deductibles higher. We can pay for repairs in capital outlay. We have to pay for premiums in the general fund. So if we can lower our premiums and potentially pay a higher deductible or repair cost on a fix, that might save us over in the general fund. So one was to start saving money to potentially self-insure buildings partially. Again, so we're talking about land, we're talking about self-insurance, we're talking about catastrophic loss or capital projects. Okay, a catastrophic loss is if you have a percent of value on one of your buildings, okay, and you have a major damage, and that building is worth $5 million, you're going to pay 1 to 2% of value for your deductible. Now we're starting to talk about $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 worth of deductible versus our standard $75,000 wind and hail on our buildings right now. So catastrophic loss was where potentially some of this cash would be invested to save in case of those rainy days. And again, the last one we talked about was a potential capital project fund. We know that our historical average cost on architectural engineering fees is around 6.5% to 6.7% of the value of the project. And so we've been talking about a CTE project in this district for about 5 or 6 years now. And that's ranged from anywhere from 15 to 25 million, depending upon what year we were talking about it. And those costs range, you talk about 6% of those, that's $750,000 to $1 million just in A&E costs alone. And again, if you're going to finance something for 20 years, you don't want to finance soft cost. All right, you don't want to finance plans. Okay, you could just soon pay cash down on that if you could. Finance brick and mortar. And so we've been saving money towards capital construction costs. So the Finance Committee was just given an updated schedule. On Exhibit A, you'll see a $250,000 transfer out in January. That went to South Dakota Fit to start that construction project fund. We just did another $250,000 with First Interstate Bank for land. And so right now we have a little over $1 million sitting in those tranches that would have been a byproduct of levy increases. So that's a history. Questions on the capital outlay revenue budget?
I think everyone here can agree that we don't want to see tax increases, but also we're faced with a lot of changes that haven't been the norm for schools that schools have faced. And one thing that you brought up, Mr. Burdett, was insurance. We are so used to paying a straight deductible cost on insurance, and luckily we still are right now. But as we go to these conferences like ASBSD and things like that, we're seeing schools that are getting forced into continuing to pay the same premium they were and then paying 1 to 2% of value of the building. At this point, we are not in that state, but once we get pushed into that by our insurance carrier, we're going to have reserves sitting there for those damages on these buildings, because our district houses how many millions of dollars in buildings? 200 million?
The value is 120, 130 million in buildings. That's what our insurable value is, something like that.
So we have to start putting money away into savings accounts essentially for that event when that occurs. As we're looking at doing the capital outlay transfer to cover some of the costs as we're going through our current situation with general ed funding, we're having to pull out a capital outlay and shift that money over. That money is supposed to be allocated to buildings and maintenance, et cetera, and we're having to use that to fund our general fund costs. So we're going to have to tighten up our belts a little bit, but we're also going to have to go and ask our constituents and be able to explain why we need to ask for more capital outlay and understand what those 4 buckets are for, why we need to be filling them.
Next month, when we get into the general fund, again, we're saving the tough ones for later. And those transfers out of capital out of the general fund, you'll see the impact those have on the general fund and where we're still at, depending upon where enrollment goes. All right, so we're just at the tip of this. in terms of that. So I can't see us getting out of that transfer to the general fund for a considerable amount of time or until we've seen the bottoming of our enrollment.
So I'll back you up just a little bit on our premiums that come out of our general fund for our facilities has grown about $300,000 in 4 years
Yeah. So, yeah.
with that. And we actually feel fairly fortunate because I've talked to other districts that are seeing our size are $500,000-$600,000 in the last 4 or 5 years have seen increase in premiums. And there's only 1 or 2 carriers in the entire state that take care of that. I know our neighbors to the west, Spearfish, has been looking at solutions. I was talking to the Huron superintendent. The property insurance game is extremely expensive right now, and our next move is going to be seeing higher deductibles. So we have to have that cash in reserve when we have a hailstorm or whatever else may take place here.
We'll talk about those premiums next month when we get into the general fund. So if we can bring up the capital outlay expenditure budget, we'll just go through that real quick. Only going to talk about minor changes that have happened since probably the last time we met. And so one was, we're going to have to do something with the font, aren't we? Again, if you look at the budget, pages 1 through just about 3 are all instructional related expenditures. So if you guys have your screens there and you can't see this, and I'm not going to go through Baden, but it's textbooks, it's instructional software, it's computer licensing, it's network equipment, and it's hardware, it's projectors and classroom desks. Those are all the things that are involved in a classroom. Those are the things we buy in capital outlay, and we call those instructional costs. Each elementary budget is relatively the same. Mrs. Johnson controls the curriculum one. We're going to be breaking down that now. I know we have some changes coming up with that. Again, we start this in December, and it's a moving target on our cost. So until we can lock in with cost, about every 60 days we call those vendors. Sometimes the numbers are minor changes. Sometimes those numbers are significantly changed, and we have to renegotiate that. And we're doing that right now in curriculum. And so the first 3 pages are truly instructional costs if you've looked at that, and I won't go through that. We have some library services. We have to buy all our library media through capital outlay. Our technology, our tech department, they buy all their networking stuff, their administrative software. It's all under their function. And then we have our administration. Mainly what's covered under the administration is like surveillance cameras. Surveillance cameras are becoming extremely important in the daily operations of our schools in terms of administrative functions, in terms of discipline, in terms of law enforcement. All those things are becoming highly critical in what we do on a daily basis. Our budget has grown considerably just in those areas. And it's not just the cameras, it's the servers that have to house the video. I believe the server at the high school is $38,000 to house all the data that comes from those. So those are things that we're trying to do. It's just, it's crazy. And then the next part of the budget really gets into facilities, okay? And what we're planning and what we've been talking about. It's improvements to facilities, whether it's roofs, painting parking lots, putting fence around the playground at Whitewood. All those things are on the facility part of it. And then the last big part of it is probably debt service, all right? Well, we talk about debt all the time. Roughly 45% of our capital outlay budget, the first thing we pay is debt. It comes right out of our account whether we like it or not. And so our debt for next year is right about 3.6 million. Okay, we'll pay in debt service next year. Okay. And if you look at it, principal payment is about 2.7 million, interest payment is 585,000, and then we transfer $282,000 of interest to our last of the 2010 qualified school construction bonds. And so that every year that goes down a little bit in terms of what we owe. Again, the next one coming off there is this 2010 series. And we'll be able to bring that interest that's accruing there back into that capital construction. I think the finance committee, I shared with them, currently there's about 5.1 million in that fund right now. It'll accrue at 3%, and then once that bond terms out, then the investor gets the 5 million back. All right, these are investors, these are banks that buy our debt. The bank gets their 5 million, and we've been making interest payments or coupon payments to them for the last 20 years. And the interest that's accrued on that sinking fund, we get that back, and that'll be around $350,000. So that 350 goes on top of the 250. All of a sudden, that construction fund has $500,000, $600,000 in it in the course of a year. So changes the capital outlay budget. Again, we're going to increase some costs due to curriculum, increase a little bit of cost due to that cost of those engineering services to help identify the electrical components. But if we do the levy we talked about, it's $7,900,000. We have the capital budget at $8,244,000. It would generate about a $562,000 surplus after these increased costs. I have everything in there but Mrs. Johnson's cost, which we don't know yet. So we're still thinking even with those, we'll be around a $500,000 surplus at the end of next year to drop into those savings accounts if we do the levy. Again, so anything less than that comes off that surplus balance. So.
Any more details for his quick review?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I blew through it to where I started to slobber.
We're very fortunate we have Mr. Burdett handling that because it's done very, very well.
9E 2025-2026 annual report. Attached is the 25-26 annual report. The report will be distributed electronically and as an insert in the Black Hills Pioneer and Prospector.
So when you look at this, last year when we did our annual report, it came out in November. We had about a 4-pager. The board was asking about different things that could be added, more information to talk about our district and different areas with that. So, and student success was one of those things that we do, looking at those areas and history. So Tanya, she gets all the credit for creating this and moving this forward. Our goal is next year, now we've done the full, 12-pager almost, I think it is, that we'll be actually putting this out in November, and we're currently talking to the chamber in SEDC about having a state of Sturgis, and we present some information there along with this as a handout moving forward in the future. So quite a bit of information in here, highlights of our students, student success, things we've been doing in infrastructure and other areas there. Any questions after seeing that before? One other request you guys had was to try to get this as a physical copy to more families that don't have students currently in school and are senior citizens. So that's why we'll be doing the mailer piece for that time. It's been a work in progress. And again, look right down there and thank Tanya for all the work on this. A lot of us give a little input, but she does all the work to make sure this looks so good, and she gathers all the information. What's interesting, this is a lot of 24-25 information for the 25-26 school year, but what takes place is the state sort of overlaps, and when they send their information out, you can't get all your information until almost November, December, and sometimes later. But we'll be having to do a different cutoff next year because of our timing with that. But there's a lot of great things in here that we've done for students and families from Military Connected. I'm looking at right now, the Homeschool Connection Program. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And all the other information. And you look at our ACT scores, better than the state and national average on that. And locally, one of the top scores for that also. I think we're just behind Hill City is the only school district in the Black Hills that's ahead of us for ACT scores. And then I could go into a long discussion about how state determines proficiency, but I do not want to bore you to death on that. It's an arbitrary setting number that was done years ago when they went to the new assessment that was part of the standard-based system. And we're actually asking legislature to look at putting a better comprehensive assessment system in, and we don't think it's going to pass right now. But all right. Other questions with this? Concerns with what we put together here?
I'm just not certain which one is longer, this or the bus contract in this month's board packet. Great job, Tanya. She got an email right away after I read it for the length of it, but it looks awesome. (9F) Homeschool Connections Program Calendar. Due to the increased enrollment and likelihood of the continued growth of the Homeschool Connections Program, Superintendent Wayne Wormstead recommends that the board approve establishing the Homeschool Connection Program as its own educational structure or school with the South Dakota Department of Education. This designation would allow the program to operate as a standalone school with its own courses, sections, and assigned teachers consistent with the setup of the other schools in the district.
Okay, very simply what this allows us to do is what we learned with the current Homeschool Connection program that has over 30 FTE. In the last 2 years, we've netted about $130,000+ above our costs in general fund. So it's actually done better than we thought it would. We thought the first year we'd actually lose money, second year we break even. We're not looking to add staff. What this does right here is actually creates a school for us to actually register our students within that. And then we actually track that progress just like any other school that we have. This doesn't create a new physical building. It doesn't create actually any additional staffing for this. It really does is allows us to track the students. Currently, what Mrs. Olson and Mr. Porterfield have to do is every student would be assigned to a building, and they have to track and create classes in all these buildings, creating a lot of redundant work across that. The homeschool students will actually start in one facility underneath Tina Bringle is a secretary of the Register Mall, and she does most of the work right now already for that. And then from there, if we need to, we'll branch those kids out for in-person learning at whether it be a rural school or Stage Barn or Whitewood or any of the schools we have. They'd just be branched out there for in-person. Otherwise, they'd be housed for all their student identification information, just like we do for a Whitewood school, CMCS, Sturgis Elementary, even the high school. It's just a coding system for that. There are no costs for this. In fact, we've looked at not adding any staff right now. We're splitting duties for Sturgis Elementary to keep the FT at 1.0. We'll be looking at putting the administrative thing into coordination where Mrs. Olson will actually be the coordinator for that. I will be the administrator of record for this. With that, no additional cost there for that. I'll be licensed principal and everything else there to support that, and we'll have direct secretarial support for that also. So this is a no-cost problem with this.
This is really a tracking mechanism, right?
Yep.
It's like it separates these kids in this program out of the schools so we can, how much are we getting for them? What are the results of
testing, everything else.
All that, right?
Yep, we'll be assigned to that. So when we go through that process, when we started this, we didn't do all that work because we weren't sure, because starting a school and ending a school is actually a lot of work, correct, Tanya? Until we knew that the pilot took off, we didn't want to start all that piece. And now we say, okay, it's done well. We have enough critical mass with homeschool students in our family to generate 30 FTE plus, we think, over time. And we still project that next year that'll be over $100,000 net revenue for next year.
And we'll register it as a K-8?
It'll be registered as a K-8. So all of our testing will be a K-8 system within that.
Because running it out of Whitewood, that was kind of the convoluted piece of it because of Whitewood's registration versus.
Yeah. So a lot of things that have place. So we do a K-5. We'd register if there's students at Whitewood K-5, but if they're 6th grade, 7th, 8th, we had to assign them to a middle school. And then we had to set whole new sections and standing in every single middle school. And so we'd have a 5-section middle school English. There'd be a 6th section staying out here. And we have to individually target and register every single kid specifically for those, even though they're online. And then Mrs. Olson would have to go into every single school to find the right kid in the right grade book in order to assign a grade. So what we found is the whole program was extremely inefficient the way we started it in the pilot, and something we learned. And after talking to the state, the easiest way to change that and move forward and track our kids academically and budgetarily was to create a school. So that's all it is.
Is that school then going to have a name?
We're still, this time we're still calling it Homeschool Connections for that. The Homeschool Connections K-8 school. Unless you want to name it something else, I think Tanya needs to know real soon because we had to permanently name that school.
Maybe just to clear it up, it's just a calendar with an infinite campus.
Yep.
Like we already have all of our schools at already.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
So Infinite Campus, every single building has a calendar built around it that has all the coursework inside that, teachers assigned, all the stuff behind the system that allows us to track, report to the state, make sure we have certified teachers in the right program, everything else all the way through that. It's a large piece of software, Infinite Campus behind this. this really just streamlines how we can do this work and makes it much easier for Tanya and Tina to work together and make sure things are actually logged right and tracked.
(9G) 4-day school review process. Attaches the outline timeline for a 4-day school week review with the decision in January 2027 about a possible calendar change for the fall of 2027. The first step is to form a committee to review and report to the school board. I would ask a board member to chair the committee jointly with another member of the committee. The recommendation would come from the committee next January to proceed or not with a 4-day school week.
So doing the research on a 4-day school week and previous research I've done, I pulled this all together and then, of course, put out a calendar timeline here. And then knowing that what our record is, we're able to get work done in August, in July, between staff and community members with vacations and the rally coming up, I pulled that time frame out for this. This includes surveying and everything else. This is not a superintendent process. This is the district wants to make a long-term commitment to this. This is the school board, community, staff process to look at the pros and cons. I'll facilitate and help assist this. But when we were doing the modified 4-day week calendar and doing all the budget stuff, it became the superintendent's plan for this and try to problem solve everything, which I told you flat out there was not enough time by April for one person to problem solve this. This is truly going to say if we're going to change the shape and what we do in our district for 5-day week to 4-day week, or a modified or whatever the end result is, that is truly needs to be a community and school board member decision that outlives any single administrator what's taking place there and why you're moving forward with this long term. So I would ask that in April, we look at this, say if you want to move forward with this, and then you give direction to in March, to form a committee. We bring people together and we start this timeline process as a guide to get through this, and have a recommendation from the committee on whether we as a district should move forward with this. Also inside that's linked all the different articles and information that you can find on many different things. I will say my early projection, unless something is somewhere between 0.7 and less than 1% savings, based on how we currently operate a lot of stuff. But it could be less, it could be more than that. That's just ballpark looking at our budget and our guidelines. So if you do this for major savings, I don't foresee you'll see major savings. You'll see some. But after looking at the busing contract, after Transportation Committee went through that, and we asked for proposal for 4-day week, their capitalized costs and their employment costs are what's going to keep their up in order to keep the bus service running, similar to we would have maybe in food service that we have to look at. So remember, one of the major concerns, everybody likes the idea, but everybody's really concerned, especially your hourly employees, how that's going to affect them. So taking time to say how it's going to affect them, what's it really look like, what's going to happen on the 5th day. Is the district going to have something in place or not? Those are all those things that just really need to be formulated through this and thoughtfully considered. And then public meetings and gather input again. Don't step up all at once to jump on that committee. But no, seriously, we just need 1 or 2 board members on it. And I expect it to be about 12 people, 3-4 staff members, 3-4 parents. If there's a couple high school students like to be part, of course, invite that too. 1 person chair it from the board.
We've got 1 student shaking her head back there.
All right, once a 4-day week, yeah. Co-chair it with a community member at the same time to really drive this as a community project.
I'm more than willing to step up and join the committee and help.
Lee, you said yes? Okay. So we got 2 board members, nobody has objects, would sit on that committee, and then I will work with you to get this started. I would like a motion at the next meeting to move forward with this, so it's board action moving this forward long-term, and if there's possible travel costs to visit other schools and other things that take place, the board's in support of those financial obligations to look at things. There is not a set budget on that yet because I am unsure where the committee would like to go to see things. All right.
And I did give the finance committee, you guys got kind of a 2-year scenario of what your board budget looked like.
Yep.
So we can meet next month. If you want to make some adjustments to that, Justin, just let me know.
Okay.
Any concerns with the timeline that's presented there? All right.
9H 2627 staff reduction discussion. I would read the background, but I'm sure you want to
No.
talk about it, Mr. Wormstead.
I'll just walk through this for discussion here. You know, we have the closure of Atoll, which will be absorption of 1 FT teaching, 2 paraprofessionals, and then we have the 5th grade moving to Whitewood over there. Our initial estimate was $1.25 million, with projected enrollment being less than our 2918. Looking at prior enrollment's going to be 2,900 or maybe less with that. So realistically, our number is going to be about 1.5 million is where we should land at for next year. The first $350,000 is going to come from a general fund transfer from capital outlay over to offset that for the time being. So then I went through the list that was still on there and put rural admin reduction, Whitewood rural admin reduction, the rural reading intervention program, intervention teacher, it's part of that originally. The gifted program, which was on the original list from October. New is a high school assistant principal that we had retire. Added that. High school math FTE instead of 1.0 counselor. Now, that came from the high school looking at what they have and what they have for classes. It's not eliminating any courses. I want you to understand that. We still have access to all the courses. Yes, some class sizes be there, or a teacher may be put on overload, which will reduce a little bit of the savings on that. But if you saw from today and what they do each and every day are counselors with this, I told you before, the one position I prefer not to put on the list is the counseling position. Just serving our kids today and the community, what took place, invaluable, and everything else still continued across our district. Mr. Wilson, who has a conflict right now, looking tonight, so he couldn't be here. I'll have him come back and talk a little bit more about that next week or next month, or give a narrative so you understand exactly what's taking place there. I don't want to misspeak on his behalf. That was the alternative to that because we had a resignation in math. Remember, I told you our original goal starting last summer was all teaching positions are done through attrition, okay, not layoffs, not renewals. So that's why we moved through there. The music 0.8 to 0.5 FTE, that is just a reduction, not elimination of the program because of Atoll, and then looking at the time that we're actually committing to some of that as a savings there. Rural paraprofessional, yes, is on there as when we look at the transitions and movements. We have some commitments to areas. I put the rural library paraprofessional on there as a savings. Also, that'd be provided by the teachers in that as we reduce services there. A school resource officer at Stage Barn. So we go to sharing a school resource officer with all the things we worry about between Stage Barn and PVE, similar to what we currently do at Sturgis Elementary and Sturgis Williams Middle School. We share one. And then the 4 elementary teachers at PV and Sturgis Elementary, that was originally, if you remember, 2. Okay, I've asked them to absorb ahead of time, and that will move some of our classes from 21, 22 to 24, 25 per classroom in the 2nd and 3rd grade, and then in, I think, 4th grade over at Piedmont Valley with that. About $950,000. I think depends on where we land, this could be as high as 970. We have about another $120,000 we think we can find throughout the budget. You have to realize that the Meade School District budget did not grow much from the 10% cut in a lot of areas for services of that. We are a district that's very heavy on services that are our staff. Okay, Mr. Jade Temple, our AD, is actually reworking our travel schedule to pull a lot of money off that. We also see some of our travel budget will actually go down with the change in bus company. So we're actually pulling things out of there. I will say, it doesn't matter, our fine arts program is about I'll say as thin as it can be and beyond thin, especially in our music departments. We don't have room in that area. We are consistently the lowest number of activities in AA schools with the fewest number of activities, coaches, directors, and we actually at the bottom of pay. So there's not a lot of areas that we're going to get efficient in those areas.
We're not targeting any supplies in the co-curricular. There's nothing there.
There's nothing there.
So we're going to see some savings from what's going on at Woodle Field, in terms of
maintenance
things needed to maintain that. That'll go away. Our health service contract we'll be able to eliminate $15,000 of an expense there in the trainer and some stuff like that. So there's nothing in supplies in those co-curriculars that they don't get anything anyway.
So from this fall, we did a bigger, deeper dive because everybody says fundraise, fundraise, fundraise. So 2 years ago, we raised $340,000 for activities, field trips, and everything else. Last year, we raised $375,000. We continue to do that. Our current athletic training contract will be going with Sanford Black Hills Orthopedic on that moving forward, and that will actually drive down some of our costs for supplies in that area because of that contract, and also for capital outlay budget future items that we have there, they'll be set aside. We'll raise in 5 years about $240,000 from them, but that's going to be set aside in capital-based areas because we will have spots that we're going to need that we don't want to tap out of other areas. Now, 13 FTE, this is done through the natural attrition process, and there's good reasons. Everybody's going to have why we don't do something. The question is going to be, what's the alternative? Because I had Mr. Burdett look at what we currently have in reserves and general fund in other areas. We can't go $1.5 million again like we did this year and expect us to be able to cash flow in general fund very quickly. We have a fund balance that's been depleting. Unfortunately, us and many schools, including Spearfish, Huron, Aberdeen, Mitchell, declining enrollment, ladder funding at best, which is a cut, is driving every district into this position moving backwards. Barring transfer money from capital outlay, which we'll be doing, or a voter-approved opt-out, we're going to have to right-size our district to the number of students we have, and I'm projecting with graduation, our largest class is going through 8th grade through seniors now, and with birth rates being the lowest they've been, that we're going to see in the same situation that Spearfish right now seeing, that they're talking to Mr. Easton over there, that they're seeing more graduates than they have kindergartners coming in 2-3 years. 2,900, if that's our number, is not our bottom number probably in 2 or 3 years. Just going to tell you that. So this is going to be an ongoing thing of saying priorities, increasing maybe some class sizes, grabbing wherever we can attrition on that, and then still probably in the future looking at, unfortunately, non-renewing some staff or reductions in force within the teaching ranks. Doesn't mean we change what we're offering, but we can't offer much less. I keep get asked, says, why don't we have? Says, our budgetary decisions made or passed. We don't have a business program at the high school right now. Okay, we should be having health services. We can't add that in right now either. Our high school's as big as it's been, 800 plus kids. So, unfortunately, the board has a lot of decisions to reach, and none of them are enjoyable for me to propose or for you to take action on. So I'm ready to prepare to field any questions you have on the very unpopular list that's been presented again.
I can start. I guess just as a former school librarian and as the former head librarian for this district, I do just want to advocate for keeping the rural library paraprofessional position. I fight all the time in my current job for school librarians across the state, and over 60% of them are paraprofessionals. We have one certified teacher librarian in this district, Heidi Cruz, and she currently travels around to the 6 schools in the districts, not the rural, just the other 6. And when I was in that job previously, I traveled to 3 and she traveled to 3. And I can tell you that I was stretched thin in 3 schools. I know that she's stretched thin at best in 6. We have a retirement of a library para from one of our schools, and I think that maybe we could do some work with finding a permanent location for Heidi, who is our district librarian, and keep the rural librarian as well.
I would like to add to that too. I was just looking at this list. There's 10 items and 5 of them have the word rural on it. And I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be cuts everywhere, but it's starting to hit harder than I thought it would. Because the teachers, if they're going to take over the music program, and then
they are not. as long as we have someone that applies, which I think we received an application.
Did we? Okay.
Yeah, so we have 0.5. We'll be looking at interviewing and hiring for that.
Because I know at one point, we thought if we couldn't replace a music teacher, the teacher had to do that. But I've heard from some teachers that the librarian does give them a little bit of planning time. I mean, and that out there is crucial because there's one teacher doing 6, 7 grades. I mean, there's a lot of planning time that I don't know. I'm not a teacher, but it sounds overwhelming to me. I was just looking at the list, and half of them have rural in it. And if we can at least, I don't know, throw them a bone somewhere. I mean, the librarian is the least cost, I think, on the list. If we can, like Scotty was saying, try to save something out there.
I agree with both of you in the comments you made there. So I would be in favor of maintaining those and keeping those in.
I just want to add to that too. I think it would save 0.75, I think, instead of 0.25 with how it would all work out. And more so than even just the planning time, when we're talking about literacy and the state's literacy initiative with the science of reading and moving literacy forward in South Dakota, I just find it really hard to eliminate librarians anywhere when they are the foundation of literacy in our schools and for our children.
I think I don't even know how to word this, but I think if we put more pressure on some of the teachers in that rural area, we won't have them. I mean, life's too short to be miserable. And I'm not saying they're miserable because I think they love what they do. They obviously do. But I think we need to try and support them. If it's a 0.25 FTE, if we can do that for a little bit of extra support, we ought to be able to find a way to give them that.
I would say that the number one support that we have for our students are teachers. And that should remain so as best we can. I am curious about the math teacher. How does that balance?
So Mr. Wilson will present on that. He was unavailable tonight. So, but we'll have that at the March meeting. I'll actually have that sent out ahead of time. He's actually mapped that out and brought that proposal to me to take the counseling off and put that math on there. We won't see a cut in any math classes, but how that shifts, I can have him do that.
I would be interested to see like what would be possible with Scotty's suggestion, perhaps at the next finance committee meeting.
Yeah, and we've actually discussed that a little bit because that's brought up currently with this. So to answer, some of that, this isn't a target about one thing or another area, and all of our teachers across our district, we've had teachers leave because of the stress at larger schools, smaller schools, medium schools. With that, we can make those adjustments with this. I just looked at a number that was approximately half of what a school closure is going to be for that. Approximately 60-some thousand. School closure is about $128,000 in savings. To move forward with that. And next year, as you've heard me say before, we'll be looking at the middle school programs such as Spanish and STEM and some of those things that we'll have to look at reductions to this because we can't everything's important and we could grow programs, I would absolutely do that in a heartbeat. We're going to be the board's going to have a lot of hard decisions, and keeping everything without an opt-out is not going to be sustainable. It's pretty unfortunate with that. So the state says number one thing is efficiency, second thing is effectiveness for schools. And we're going to be forced to become more efficient across the board. I mean, some of you sat in that meeting with Dr. Graves, and you point out, and that's, doesn't matter which building it is in our district, we got to find more efficiencies. So, and I'm open to other suggestions, and I appreciate a solution, Scotty.
We need a state that supports effectiveness over efficiency.
Already been a lawsuit over that. About 20 years ago, there's a lawsuit over that. And effectiveness lost at the state Supreme Court. Other items on there. Those are a couple of them. I'm assuming we're not going to replace the high school assistant principal. Here's an opportunity for you to talk about the gifted and talented program. On that, if retention of school resource officer or not increasing class sizes in the elementaries as we move forward. They all have value of not doing. If the scope is narrowed to that, to the librarian piece, we'll move forward on that and have an alternative with it, and I can have information on the math position. But every time we have a resignation, we're going to evaluate whether or not we have to keep, I'm going to say this, have to keep the position. Not that we don't want to keep the position. And, do we actually absolutely need to keep that? And that'll go all the way through May and June when we have late resignations, folks. And I'll be bringing those back as whether or not we should do that. So even though these are sort of March, April deadline items, this process to get ourselves ahead of the curve, we're going to continue to bring those back before the board as those things take place. Other suggestions or ideas or concerns, what's on the list? I appreciate your comments about this, though, really do.
I know that. Oh.
Reiterate some of these guys that said out here, one teacher, I know she's retired. Okay. One teacher that's affecting 140 kids is really something that we should look at. I think something we should prioritize. When you can get around to that many kids with one single person, that is efficiency.
Okay.
And it's effective.
So, and I don't disagree with that statement about she does a wonderful job and those kids do great things. I just got beat by how old was the chess player today? 7th grader. I made 3 mistakes and he took advantage of every single one of them and beat me soundly. The question is, what area do you want to be more efficient in? Concern's going to be math. What if we have a high school English teacher that resigns? Or what if I have a social studies teacher, or if I have a teacher, another elementary teacher, or a middle school teacher as we go through this? We're currently have resignations, and we're looking at shifting people around to these positions before April 1st, because that's what our contract says, and assigning them positions for that. The question is, what's the alternatives? Not saying that all these things aren't valuable. So having an alternative by Mrs. Bruck down there saying this is an alternative is something that we can work with and possibly make that happen of the bigger savings and work through that and go through those headaches and those stresses and burdens they'll maybe cause on somebody else. We get that. Where does the board want to go with this? Because I've been directed to find this, and as the number changed and I look at enrollment, I can't set you up in a position where all of a sudden you're deficit spending, you don't have cash flow. I don't think Brett would let me come to the meeting if I even proposed something like that. But as we go through that, these are the unfortunate things that, I know Huron's well over $1 million and actually laying some people off. We build about $1 million plus here, and we're not laying anybody off except maybe a paraprofessional. Honestly. I just need to know where we're going to go and how we're going to do this, because And I'm open to any ideas we have, but unfortunately, from doing this before, every board member is going to be judged, put value statements on value of programs over other programs, pitted against each other on that whole thing. And it doesn't matter what it is, it will be a hard decision. Whether it be tag or I'm not going to name anything else because I don't want to scare anybody, but that's one of those things that you're just always going to have in front of you for the next, I foresee at least 2 years beyond this year in this state. Hope it's not. Hope I'm completely wrong on that. And the money tree just grows money at the state.
I think, Tom, we need to be careful. Like my daughter's in the gifted program, has done phenomenal in the gifted program. But if we choose to keep the gifted program, what's on that list after that? Something's coming. And just like we saw by choosing to keep Hereford at this time, we saw more things pop up on here that weren't here in the fall. Like at some point we have to get to where we're not deficit spending, and there's going to be an ulterior thing that comes up, and hopefully there's a hidden gem in there that comes out and we can save some of this stuff, because I would love to see the gifted program stay. I would love for us to keep all the rural stuff, but we also know that we have a deficit that we can't continue to spend at, or we will bankrupt the district, and we have to make changes. And that's what we're here to do, is to really talk these out, meet with Mr. Wormstead, Mr. Burdett, provide ideas. But Mr. Burdett's got 20 plus years in education. Mr. Wormstead's 30 plus years. They've seen this stuff before. Like they know how to navigate this. There's a reason why we have some of the stuff that we have and no other schools have it, or no local schools have it, because they couldn't sustain it within their budget. Like we have a lot of tough decisions even coming up that are just as tough as the decisions we made a couple months ago. And there's going to be replacements for whatever we choose to not remove off there. So essentially, we will continue. Like you can go and look at any of our board minutes, board agendas, and you can see what we're funding in those. We do in July an approval of the budget, and that'll give you an overarching picture of everything that's in there.
And that full budget by category, including all of our activities, is listed by activity and fund source for that, by item all the way through. And it's public, it's on the website. And if you need assistance getting that, we have everything listed out there as total costs, not by FT, by positions like that, with that across there. And most of those programs and activities were cut years ago and have completely fundraised all those cuts. So.
And please tell me if I'm completely incorrect in what I'm about to say. Correct me. But when we're thinking about cutting activities, especially, and things like that, we also have to keep in mind Title IX requirements of keeping things balanced.
Yeah, we do have Title IX issues with every district does to try to keep those balanced what takes place there. So we can't just single out female sports if we don't have like and comparable activities for that. So you're looking at cutting 2 for that. So unfortunately, and that can go into speech, debate across the board. That could be co-curricular FFA areas. Those are all extras within that if the board wants to dive down, and with that, that's something that can be done.
And we also
Instead of cutting the program, coaches and things like that, we go to a strictly volunteer force versus paid coaches.
You will not have any teams. I mean, you'll have a couple, but you won't. You need. I'll be shocked if you had more than a handful of teams left. I know how much effort those coaches and those teachers. I mean, I'm talking about my wife right now, and the amount she's basically volunteering half of her time the way it is. So
when you get into the competitive level that our high school coaches put in, I coach a lot of youth sports, baseball, softball, football. I don't put in anywhere near the amount of effort that they put in with game film and all the preparatory work that they do. You won't get the same quality out of your activities. And as sad as it is to say, with South Dakota being an open enrollment state, students will choose to go to other districts because of the activities that they offer. And that's the sad thing is like you pick and choose your battle trying to figure out what will maintain the highest enrollment for the activities and still meet your mission, what we're here to do.
It would not be an easy.
I mean, realistically, if we truly were here to serve our community, the first thing we'd be doing is adding a healthcare program out to that high school, because we need a lot of healthcare workers in our area.
3,000 plus within 5 years.
And it's not something that we can sustain right now, but it's something that we have to figure out as we move forward.
And just as much as I'd like to just cut everything to make everybody happy, that we can't. But I've known a lot of coaches, and if you figure what they get paid by the hour, it's nothing. It really is. I mean, even the younger kids coaches, it's not much, let alone the high school coaches. So that is a slippery slope.
Well, I'm going to just think about the amount of hours and volunteer time just to keep our speech and debate teams as top notch in the state as they are. I mean, they're phenomenal. And that is not done with great pay, and it's done with a lot of volunteer and extra hours. So, and we have teachers doing this in the classroom too, doing extra hours and everything else to make things work. I'm just going to say across the board, it says you're not talking about lack of effort. It's just going to be what's the hard decisions this board comes to unanimous vote, not unanimous, majority vote. And I expect a lot of 5-4s and 4-5s and 6-3s and on across the board with this. And I want alternatives with that and happy to look at them. This is the easy year. I'm going to tell you this right now. This is our easy year because we can do almost all this through attrition. And attrition through those programs is not popular because some programs will go away. But next year is you are laying people off if our enrollment drops. You are issuing RIF notices, pink slips. I know a school district that just had a meeting via Zoom because they were all across and they had to basically go out with their list and tell all those staff members that they did not have jobs the next year. Principals were on one-to-one to those buildings. I've done that before in my career, and this is what we're looking at doing next year. And right now, this part is easy. You're going to lay off a lot of young teachers possibly if it really dips. And that's no different than neighboring districts and other things that are taking place across the state right now, unfortunately. And we don't want to be there, but I think unless enrollment grows and we're doing our active open enrollment recruiting again with that and see how that goes to help balance the numbers out again, which we've been a positive by about 150 a year net open enrollment.
Real quick, you're one of them volunteering for the 4-day week. Is that what you raised your hand for? Oh, I'm trying.
Did you say that our high school enrollment is up though?
It's probably as big as it's going to be.
It's as big as it's going to be, but 829 was our count day with that. We project over about 800 next year again We've been as high as 835 since I've been here, just under 800. So yeah, we're right about the biggest we've been. And that position is 0.6 high school, 0.2 rural, 0.2 Whitewood. But that's a shared position across that, so it's not just a high school counseling position. We're at 2.6 for the high school.
And I worked with Ms. Sanders since I was in the 4th grade. I'm the president of our chapter at the FFA in service, and at the district level, I plan to go state level. I'm also a leader in a lot of different organizations, and I would I would put a lot of that to TAG, because when you're younger, you don't realize the abilities that you have until you get kind of pointed out, and I feel like I got that in TAG. And I feel like a lot of what we're talking about is how is this going to affect, if we don't get rid of this problem, how is it going to affect, or what are we going to be able to do? But I can tell you for sure, I don't know a lot about the numbers, but I know that it's going to eliminate a lot of leaders, and it's going to take a lot of potential away from kids starting at a young age. And I really, really appreciate, I think about a lot of the people that I've interacted with in TAG at the high school, and I think that I understand, I'm not all completely knowledgeable about the numbers with everything. I also am obviously a rural advocate doing FFA. I see the importance of the kids at the rural schools. But I also just think that TAG is something that she does impact, however, 140 students right now at a plethora of schools. But not only that, she still impacts me, and I'm a senior at the high school that I don't actively work with. And I just hope you guys can consider that when you're thinking about the TAG program. I know this is not, I didn't plan on speaking. I saw you guys were speaking at the beginning, and I didn't know, because obviously I came here for this nightmare, right? But I think that I was here 5 years ago debating on the exact topic with Ms. Sanders right next to me. I was here 5 years ago doing that. I had a presentation with my TAG team. And I think it's just amazing that I was able to come here tonight and hear about it. At the high school, I've been able to work with the Sturgis TAG people, and they've pushed me academically because of what Ms. Sanders pushed us to do when we were young. So I just hope that you guys can consider that, and if there's another way I could talk, I will definitely try to figure it out after this meeting. But I think that TAG is something that definitely needs to be considered and impacts an amazing amount of people. So.
Thank you.
I was here 5 years ago as well. So thanks for bringing that back around. And I just wanted to take a moment with the announcement of Mrs. Sanders' retirement to thank her. How many years have you been in the district, Laura? 12. So I just think you've made a huge impact on so many students. So thank you.
I will second that. I was also here 5 years ago in that same discussion, and my 8th grader would probably not be the human he was today if not part of that program. My freshman in college, I don't know, but my 8th grader, yeah. But so this is a super hard, very personal, it affects multiple ones of us up here personally. So it's hard even talking about it. So.
As for the question on the counselor piece, it's literally a chess game right now. We have a resignation and we can shift one person, knowing that in the future that there's likely to be, but you would rather people find a job in the interim and then make those moves as that comes. And this math position landed that way, where the math could have been next year and the counselor could have been this year, or vice versa. But it all depends on what student enrollment does. So the roundabout answer to your question is, the way the chips landed would allow us to keep a counselor this year with a reduction in math, and they can sustain that according to the administration at the high school.
Okay, I have a question. So I think the math thing's pretty clear from my understanding, and I have not talked to you or Pete. We can absolutely absorb that, and class sizes are going to be relatively normalized for math with what we have left.
What's going to take place is you'll see some larger class sizes, and or we will have a teacher teach during their prep and pay them what's called an overload.
Correct.
That's my understanding of that, and it has less of an impact for them to be able to execute that at the high school than the counseling position, especially with cutting the administration piece at the same time.
Can we get rid of both this year and then save a couple of those rural ones, or partially? I don't know. I don't know if that's an option as well.
I need the board to decide what the priorities are. I showed you the numbers this last year about where we spend our money, where we're at. Our high school, for the high school students back there, should realize that we should be spending $200,000 to $300,000 more in the red. Our high school operates almost in the black, which tells me right away we have 3 to 4 fewer programs than we should have serving those kids in skill-based college track programs for their future and potentially should have. Now, it's okay. I'm not upset about that. We also spend to keep inefficient, and I'm going to use the word inefficient, not effective, inefficient because they're effective, schools with lower enrollment open on that. At the same time, to be efficient, we put more kids in our large elementaries for those teachers to handle with that. That's our structure. That's just what our structure is. We have to decide if that's the continued structure you say to do those things in the rural and say we're going to pull away even more from the high school. That is probably one of the most efficient high schools I've ever seen for what we offer for the number of students we have. But that's a decision the board needs to make. I can bring suggestions, ideas, how I think the K-12 structure, and realize this, we have one high school in our district. Yes, we have kids that open roll out. We have a lot of kids that open roll in. How do we take care of that? Because I know the more that gets hurt, the less that enrollment is, the fewer programs you have, and that cycle continues through that process. So I agree. We could absorb that and do other things too that we would be reducing and laying off a counselor then, which was one of our goals, was to do everything we can through attrition.
And I think to clarify what Wayne's saying is we have a unique district.
Yes.
That serves a large, vast group of people. And you heard him speak about Spearfish and Huron and some other Aberdeen. Those schools are all centrally located. Spearfish, all their buildings are within that town. Their busing fees are nowhere near what ours are. We serve a vast district with buildings all over the place. And we as a board have chose to do that for years and years and years. And we are very proud of the district that we serve, but we have very unique problems that don't make any sense to the legislators in Pierre, that don't make sense to other school boards, that doesn't make sense to other administrators. We are unique. We spend money in places that a lot of other districts have cut 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But with what Wayne's saying, we are very proud of our district. We are proud of what we do. We are proud of our staff. We're proud of our students. So please be aware that as we go through these decisions, they're hard on all of us up here at the board. And if Wayne's correct that next year's worse, I don't know if you're going to have any board members left, because this year has been extremely difficult and a lot of heartfelt decisions have had to be made. So take that into consideration, the district that we serve, and truly go out there and look at some of these other districts. Like there's other places that have closed their rural buildings down when they drop below 27 students in those buildings.
And my intent was not to disparage whether it be a Sturgis Elementary or a rural school with that. It's just that with our uniquenesses, we have no support from the legislature for our uniqueness. Heck, our legislators, good people at the same time, you had one show up and say, make the cuts you got to cut in front of a forum of everybody there. Just do the cuts.
The words were just cut it.
Just cut it. And no, Mr. Carley, Senator Carley, with that. And we're not, and I'm talking to Jorgensen and Rice and Carley and trying to get some momentum. And I understand the state doesn't have much money, but at the same time, we're continuing to work forward for the best of our kids. You're put in a tough position, board members, to hit those numbers. And there's value at every single one of our schools, by one of our staff, and everything else takes place, and every program we have. So if we want to go different than attrition, I just need to know very soon, because we have to act at the next board meeting legally to lay anybody off. We'll have a continuing contract, or non-renewals we have to notify by April 15th legally. There's timelines that I put out in that.
As much as I enjoy talking, I would just like to say to everybody listening, everybody that's here, we all appreciate your concerns, your thoughts, and as many lumps as we've taken, I still wouldn't want Wayne's job. I mean, as much as all of us, including myself, disagree with him at times, he's got to come up with a plan, whether it's right, wrong, it's a plan. And honestly, it's a better plan than I could probably find because I don't know what he knows and I'm not paid to know what he knows. But I guess I'm just trying to say none of us like this, including everybody out there too. And I know there's not anybody on this board that enjoys this, and I know Wayne doesn't enjoy it. So everybody's in a tough spot. So I guess just give everybody a little bit of grace is what I'm asking.
So I'll look at the library proposal on that, and anything else anybody sends me to look at, I'll have information to you for Mr. Wilson by the end of the week, so you have that in writing, so that way you all see it before the Finance Committee, so the Finance Committee can discuss that also on that. I think those are the two items I heard right now. I don't have an alternative if you pull something off other than go to a non-renewal of a non-continuing contract teacher, which may increase class sizes or eliminate a different program. I just want to be very clear about that. There's not a magic list of resignations out there we're holding back. We're going through every possible list to not lay people off and keep programs. Okay? And try and absorb that where we can. But if you have any ideas, be happy to listen to them.
Item 10, reports. 10A, administrator reports. Would any administrators like to come up and talk about their report? I heard that one of them's got charts and graphs. Board members, so we have the stoplight report up, so you can see once it's zoomed up a little bit. We are making a little bit of progress. We have not done any hours of training in the last month, so we're still at 38.32, and 2 board members have met their requirement of 10 hours. We are looking at what some training that we could possibly do in-house that would occur prior to board meetings. So it would be an optional meeting where maybe special ed comes in and gives a presentation on sped ed law. Maybe Brett does something on finance. But if Brett does it, it'll probably be an hour and a half long meeting. So we'll get extra time there. But we're looking at different ways of gaining some continuing ed because it's important as board members that we learn more about our district and more about the jobs that we do. Community engagement. So we have 78% of our board members that have attended at least one event. We've got 56% of our board members that have attended at least 3 events. And then we have 33% of our board members that have attended 6 events, and somehow somebody showed up with 17 events in the last month. Somebody obviously got on the tracker, huh, Aaron? Aaron got caught up for all the fall. Strategic planning, we are 100% on that, except for meeting as a pillar group every 90 days. And I think that's just hit a road bump with all of the things that have been going on in the district lately and the budgetary issues.
And we had transition of coaches too.
New coach.
Yep.
So, all right. Item 10C, Black Hills Special Services Co-op. Terry, do you have anything for us?
Hey, yes, we did meet via Zoom or in person, and I prefer going in person because I get to meet the staff that way. And this time we actually had the business office came in and explained all the different things that they do. The one thing that I noticed right away is, from my past experience, the business office was a business manager and 2 people. Now it's a business manager and 7 people. And part of the reason for that is because of the increased number of grants and contracts that the co-op has, which means more people that have to keep track of all the different grants and contracts, and the increased paperwork that both the state and the feds require when you have grants and contracts. So it was interesting to hear all the different, it turns out all women, there are different jobs between being payroll specialist, the contract specialist, the grant specialist, accounts receivable or accounts payable, and the fact that they've had to upgrade their expense coding and their digitizing and all the different things they do, which also includes overseeing the $37 million budget, doing over $600,000 in billing every month, which includes 18,000 invoices pretty much every month. So for anyone that likes dealing with money, it's always interesting to listen to the different ones and exactly what they had to do. And quite a surprise that there was that many. So now, instead of getting the findings about separation of duties in the business manager, they no longer have that in their audits because of the increased staff. So that was our meeting this last time. Otherwise, a few other things that went on. They had Lego competitions. Their 40th anniversary is coming up. They had special ed teacher meetings. They're working on their Special Olympics polar plunge, and they graduated 21 students in their GED program.
Thank you, Terry. 10D, Superintendent.
I'm going to keep this brief. I've talked long enough. Legislatively, we're maybe not optimistic about revenue from the state, even though they received the 10% sales tax or increased revenue in December. We're working towards hopefully one-time money at least. Maybe there might be something ongoing on that, and that will close our deficit issue and whether or not we can actually give our employees some benefits and increases there. There is, I think they counted something like 32 different property tax bills. We're fortunate enough to see Senate Bill 85 go down, which would have required all opt-outs to be taken to a vote. We don't have that, haven't had one, but looking as a statewide issue, they've had 14 recently school boards that have actually gone to opt-outs that were challenged by referendum, and all 14 still passed. You realize the board is a representative of the community for this, and what's taking place has a stronger pulse on what's taking place than being legislated on that. I did have a good conversation with Representative Rice and Jorgensen about making sure that they're not just sending unfunded mandates, which there's about 15 or more in this, where there's new rules that requires us to invest money and or time or human capital to take care of. So we had a great conversation about a bunch of those the other night in Pier, and sort of earmarked some of those as concerns that they were worried about now too. I will give Jorgensen and Senator Carley a lot of credit for working on appropriations, trying to solve problems. That is a ton of work. They're doing a ton of work there, even though at times we disagree on topics. A lot of things are going to shake out over the next 3 weeks. You're going to see a lot of things. They have an unprecedented number of bills that have come through on that. I think the one that we're looking at that will probably come through may help us, but it's just shifting the cost somewhere else. What we can do is actually property insurance that can be paid out of capital outlay as a capital investment. While that just shifts it from general fund over to capital outlay, we're already shifting money from capital outlay over to general fund, so it ends up sort of being a wash to a degree with that. And vast majority of districts actually transfer funds right now because the general fund doesn't get funded well enough. You can talk about multiple neighboring districts that have done that. I'm going to end right there. Is there any bills that have caught your attention as you've seen things from the Legislative Action Network that you want information on, as I have my whole list up here they've been working on? There's 600 plus bills that have been dropped. That is an unprecedented number for a 45-day legislative session. It is very interesting how they're going to get through that work. Yeah, I'll probably be up at the Capitol probably end of February, first part of March, quite a bit on specific bills that they come up that are important to our district, just so you're aware of that. I think that's Senator Dybert's bill. I forget the number on that, and that's actually just $5 million placeholder. If nothing happens, he's hoping they passes that, so they'd move $5 million to hopefully offset for benefits. If you notice the governor's budget, it was for state employees, no salary increase, but he put enough money in there so they didn't go backwards benefit-wise. and also put money into his budget for utilities and those things, so those departments don't go backwards. Or for schools, a 0% is a 0%. There's no money for benefits, utilities, cost of living adjustment, so we go backwards. So a 0 is a cut. We are going to be in tougher shape because expenses go up. So Senator Diver put $5 million as a placeholder in case money's not there to try to get done and to help take off some of that, at least some of that pressure off school districts. And that's why it's there. They're waiting, it's sort of that last bill in case nothing happens. So he's got a placeholder essentially. So I've attended both Cracker Barrels, one in District 31 and the Cracker Barrel here in 29 with our legislators. Good people working hard. We disagree philosophically at times when it comes to education, let's just say. And agree on other items. All right. Last piece here, daycare conversations have been very positive. I spoke to the Whitewood City Council. I've been in front of SEDC, our chamber. I've had a lengthy conversation with their enjoyment the city to find out more information. What we're really trying to do is get the grassroots to see if there's interest in this. I need you to carry the message when people ask about this. This is not a school district program. This is a community effort to meet the needs of our employers and our families for long-term retention. We happen to have spaces that I think would work really well. I have a little bit of experience in saying that, but we need to have partnerships. If this is a school-only project, you can't afford to lose money on a daycare. Okay? We need to build people who want to sit at the table and be partners with this before we even go to steps to planning, because if we don't have partners, the plan won't matter. And you will not be able to execute it because the risk you have, because you can't operate a separate fund and transfer general fund dollars over to take care of that. You can't, and you shouldn't be expected to, so we have to find a community partnership base for all this. So I'll continue on that. I'd like to think that as soon as the legislative session is done and we have some of this stuff off the table and we're through most of our budget items, that would be towards the forefront for me to work towards in April, and then support the 4-day school week research moving forward. So that's sort of the timelines with that. But we are gathering interest, and people are wanting to come to the table to talk about daycare for our communities. Questions? My favorite motion is coming up.
Item 11, upcoming calendar events, February 10th and 12th, parent-teacher conferences. February 13th, teacher in-service, no students. February 16th, no school, President's Day. February 16th through the 20th, ASBSD, School Board Recognition Week. February 17th, Finance Committee meeting at 4:30 p.m. February 23rd, Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting at 3:30 p.m. February 23rd, Policy Committee meeting at 5. February 27th, Teacher of the Year, Support Staff of the Year, submittals due.
I forgot one thing. Our negotiation committee for teacher negotiations, all employee groups, I'll be looking at setting a meeting to talk about some different items, so you guys will be getting a meeting invite to that. End of February, first part of March, we'd like to have that first meeting before legislature's done.
Item 13, adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Lee with the motion, Brian with the second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.